the dizzy, but we can always share some ditties. It's just a cup in time. This song doesn't have to run. Life's all of us, not every moment we can be feeling fine. I wanna share a moment, just a second if you will, maybe even a cup of thrill. We could share this performance. It's tea time, come sit with me.
Well, welcome guys, Miss Liz in the house, and today is a special tea time. We are hosting for Podcasthon. If you haven't heard about them, check them out. I'm going to pop up their website during this broadcast. I have Luke Mickelson in the house, and we're going to be digging a little deeper into sleep in heavenly peace, and we're going to talk about kids that don't have beds and all that good stuff, and how we can help, and how the listeners can help, and maybe open up a chapter in your community, donate, and let's see what doors we can open up today with this bonus tea time. So let's get started with disclaimer, and then another intro for Luke, and then we're going to get Luke in here, and we're going to spill a good strong cup of tea. And today's tea is the kids. That's right, we are serving these kids. So disclaimer for Miss Liz's Tea Time live show. Miss Liz's Tea Time is a global platform dedicating to sharing real life stories, diverse perspectives, and meaningful conversations that inspire awareness, healing, and connection. Miss Liz is going live using StreamYard. Before leaving a comment during the live broadcast, please grant StreamYard permission to display your name at StreamYard.com. Please be advised that all the content brought forward during any Tea Time show is presented in good faith. However, discussions may include opinions, beliefs, and perspectives that do not necessarily represent the views of Miss Liz or the Tea Time platform. Information shared by guests is based on their own experiences and is perceived to be accurate at the given time of airing. All guests, viewers, and participants are responsible for using their own good judgment when considering any action or decision that may relate to these discussions. Some episodes may cover sensitive topics, including but not limited to trauma, abuse, grief, mental health, and other emotionally triggering subjects. Listeners' and viewers' discretion is strongly advised. Tea Time with Miss Liz is an open discussion forum designed to offer insight, inspire awareness, and create connection. It is not a substitute for professional, medical, legal, or therapeutical advice. If you require professional support, please seek assistance from qualified professionals or trusted resources in your area. If you have any questions regarding this disclaimer or the content of the discussion, you are welcome to contact me, aka Miss Liz, directly at bookingmissliz@gmail.com or visit my link tree at Miss Liz's Tea Time. By choosing to participate in, comment on, or view these live shows, you acknowledge and accept this disclaimer. Your participation is entirely volunteer. Miss Liz welcomes you to join the conversation with an open heart, and if at any time you feel this platform is not right for you, I respect your wishes and decision and welcome you back whenever you're ready. Tea Time with Miss Liz is serving truth and awareness one cup at a time. Well, today is a bonus Tea Time with Miss Liz. This week from March 14th to the 20th, over 2,800 podcasts around the world are coming together through the Podcasthon movement, each highlighting charity close to their hearts and using their voice to create impact. Today, I am honored to bring you not only a powerful cause, but also returning guest who continues to make a difference in communities everywhere. Joining us once again is Luke Mickelson, founder of Sleep in Heavenly Peace, a movement built no one simple but powerful mission. No kid sleeps on the floor in my town. Bringing Luke back for a second time is a reminder that this conversation does not end, because the need is still there. Across neighborhoods, cities, and countries, children are going to bed without a proper place to sleep. And through Sleep in Heavenly Peace, volunteers are stepping into change that's building beds, delivering hope, and restoring dignity one child at a time. This tea time is about awareness. It is about compassion and action. It is about recognizing that even the smallest acts can change a life. So grab your cup and lean in. Today's conversation is not just about listening. It's about becoming part of the change. And let me get Luke in here and let's spill some tea. Welcome, Luke.
Hey, Miss Liz. Good to see you again.
It is an honor to have you back, Luke. So, Luke, let's just dive in a little bit on sharing what you shared on the first tea time, and then we'll get into the second bonus tea time here.
That's quite the mouthful, by the way. Well done.
I work hard on these guys.
No, thanks for having me. This is great to be back on, and I hope your listeners enjoyed the first episode, to talk a little bit about how SHP, where it came from, the inspiration behind it, and from this crazy Idaho kid, farm kid from Idaho, building something that was just a passion that he stumbled into. And and that's the beauty of, I think, most nonprofits, right? They, in fact, was on with the great, not the late, but the great Mike Rowe, who he said, isn't it funny that a lot of great businesses and nonprofits start in a garage, right? And I love that. Isn't that really what the entrepreneurial spirit and it is about, right? Is ordinary people making extraordinary differences. And I can't emphasize ordinary with this guy here, and I certainly think it's extraordinary. But that's what I love about being on podcasts, and helping people realize that, listen, man, a farm kid from Idaho can do it. Anybody can do it, can make a change.
Well, Luke, we have a question in here that just came in. Is what inspired you to start this incredible mission, Luke?
Great question. There's a lot of things that brought up to this or came up to this point in my life. I was 35, kind of going through what some people might call like a midlife crisis. For me, I think I just got to a point in my age and in my maturity and whatnot that I really started asking myself the tough questions, and Liz, this is the hardest thing in life, honestly. And I think it's where you can find real true joy is when you learn how to be honest with yourself, right? When you really are like, what does bother me? Why does that bother me? What is this about? When you start asking yourself those questions, man, there's a lot of things that pop up, right? What is it? Do I believe, right? That threw me in a little bit of a, what do you call it? A faith crisis, right? And, what is the purpose here? Then what is my purpose? And all these things was starting to weigh on me. And when you don't have the answers, which I'm one of those guys that I can't stand not having the answer, right? Yeah. Man, it can put you in some dark places, right? And so in the middle of this dark place, I stumbled upon a family that didn't have any beds for their kids, right? And and not only did it hit me really hard because I thought of my own kids, it really and I thought about providing an activity for my youth Boy Scouts. All those put together just filled my internal bucket, right? And especially when I started watching the Boy Scouts help me build the first bed, and then the second bed when I had my kids and we built that second bed. Those were the shining moments that I felt my hole in my soul or heart just start to feel, and it all started coming together, especially when we started doing more and more and building more and more of this, child bedlessness business was being unearthed and uncovered. It was something that was bringing passion and purpose in my life. And when those two things collide, man, there's just about nothing that stops you. I think I shared in the previous episode, when I delivered that first bed, I'm a farm kid from Idaho that loves hunting and fishing and being outdoors and college football on Saturdays and all this stuff, right? I love that. And I loved it for 35 years. It was part of my character, my nature, right? But when you find your passion, especially when you felt like you've been without, in the snap of a finger, it all changed. Building beds for kids then was a passion I didn't know I had. I didn't know how deep and rooted and important it was to me personally. And I've never doubted or looked back since.
Well, that's really amazing. And, that's why I wanted you back, because I had so many charities that I could pick from over 600 interviews. And I was like, you know what? This is one topic we do not talk enough about is kids without beds. And right away I was like, nope, I'm bringing Luke back. Like, awesome. I was just like, but there are so many amazing organizations that I've had on Teatime. Check those out as well. But I wanted to bring the awareness to the beds. Yeah. As a mom, thinking of a child without a bed, it broke my heart. And having you come and share the first time, I'm going to be sharing the double shows today. So people will see the first show and today's show. But we have a question here for you, Luke, and it is, how can people from other countries get involved?
Ooh, great question. When we kind of blew up, right? What happened was in 2018, we started obviously building beds throughout the years, and the more we built, the more people found out about us. The more kids we found out about, the more people wanted to help. It was just awesome, right? And we were growing steadily. We started actually from about 2016 to 2018. We had grown to 7 or 8 chapters from people we knew and people we didn't know from across the country, which was great. Well, in 2018, there's this guy named Mike Rowe who was he did the Dirty Jobs series of people usually know him by that. Really cool guy. And he was doing a series called Returning the Favor on Facebook Watch. You got to look it up on Facebook. There's 100 episodes, right? And we were actually number 1 episode. Not in viewership, but in what he wanted to do in that show, which was show someone doing good and hopefully inspire others to do better, right? And to do something. And that's what we did, right? We went from 7 chapters to 440 now, but what that show did, besides he shows up, he surprises you, he gives you something that you need. We needed a warehouse. He gave us that, which was awesome. But what it really did for us was give us the megaphone that we needed to share this message to everybody that didn't know about it. So we were viewed by 10 million people all across the world, right? Well, we went from that, like I said, 7 chapters to 440 chapters. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of kids and volunteers been helped since then. Mostly started from that one show. From that, a lot of people across seas in other countries found out about it. We actually had 8 or 10 chapter requests, people that wanted to start chapters in their own country. One of those being Canada, and so we really we focused in on Canada. We hadn't expanded to another country at that point. And so we did. And we bruised our knee a few times doing that, trying to figure out how to start a nonprofit in another country. I think we're much better now. We've had to kind of pull back, and even though Canada's going great, there's so much need here in the United States. We only cover 28% geographically of the United States, which is really small. So we're working on that. We have actually an operating goal, an annual operating plan that has a strategic goal in there of reaching 40% this year, which is a huge, audacious goal, but we're going to try, right? And as far as other countries, my vision, my goal is we reach other countries. We just need to find that one person that is going to take some time, because it will take some time and some effort to get this going. I mean, we know the program. I know how to run it. I know what's successful. It's really just an easy platform. If we can find that one person, that country that's willing to take on the charge and start a charity, and we can work with you, and we've got all the tools, right? There's no reason why we can't help kids in other countries.
Absolutely. We have a question here about the volunteers. We talked about this on the first episode. Let's talk about the volunteers. How many volunteers are currently involved worldwide?
It's a great question. We actually really started tracking volunteers in about 2022, right? We did. But it was, as I said, we were still pretty young organization. I'm building this plane as I'm flying it, right? So a lot of spreadsheets and Word documents are hidden in the abyss of the world, right? But now, we've tracked it we track it very cleanly now. We've had well over 500,000 volunteers in the last 6 or 7 years. I think just last year we had almost 600,000 volunteer hours, and that was just in 1 year. So typically the way it breaks down is when we have a chapter, there's usually a chapter president and about 10 other what we call core team members. On average, right? Some chapters only have 5 and some chapters have 50, right? But on average, we have about 10 or 15 core team members. And when you put on a build, the average build is about 20 to 30 beds with about 50 or 60 volunteers, right? And we do thousands of bed builds a year, and so it compounds and it gets bigger and bigger every year.
We have another question here. What was the most emotional moment in your journey, Luke?
Wow, great question. There's been a lot of them for a lot of different reasons. One of them, I'll give you one of the more memorable situations was, and I teach a lot of chapter presidents. Listen, your bed inventory is going to go quick because there's so many kids out there. But make sure you keep 2 or 3 beds on an emergency stature, because I got a call. This is many years ago, but I got a call from an agency, CASA, which helps transitioning foster care kids into, right homes and stuff like that. Well, there was a family that had 2 kids, 7 or 8, if I recall, real young kids, brother and sister. The parents were gone. I don't know what happened to the parents. The grandparents lived too far. They lived back east, too far. They couldn't take the kids. So these kids entered the system. Well, they found a great foster care family home for them, but they only had 1 bed. And when they talked to the judge said, listen, the kids have to have their own bed. He gave them 24 hours to get a bed. What that does, right? Or when you look at that now you've got 2 kids, right? Brother and sister, the only people they know and trust in their entire lives, which is themselves, together, are about to be split up simply because they don't have a bed.
Wow.
Well, we had a bed in the house 12 hours later, right? So that's just one of those things when you really think about it and what that provided for not just the kids too, but the foster care family wanted it. They couldn't afford more beds. They're expensive, right? So it really does keep families together, and that's a pretty emotional part. But my favorite emotional part is obviously my Haley story, which is the first bed I delivered. Haley being a girl 6 years old that had never slept on a bed. I mean, 6 years old, not 1 bed, right? And when I delivered her first bed, and to see that child hug and then kiss the bed for the first time, I mean, it just melted me, And then you look up at a single mom. That's who her mom was, single mom, crying, tears going down her cheek. And I knew every single one of those tears, what they meant, because I was raised by a single mom too, right? And that's when I realized, yeah, this is way more than just a bed. It's way more than just a good night's sleep.
Oh, did I lose you for a second?
Am I there? You got me?
I got you.
Sorry, I paused.
He took a breath.
Oh, I can talk all day about great experiences and great opportunities. And I will say this, listen, I can share and talk and show videos and pictures and stuff all day long about building and delivering beds, especially delivering beds to a child. But until you're in the room physically there, you don't get to feel the weight and the emotion and then this sure joy that these kids feel when they get their bed. Because when you think about it, when you look at it really closely, when a kid doesn't have a bed, there's a lot of things that they miss out on, could miss out on, are affected by. And it's not just a bad night's sleep, right? I mean, these kids on an emotional front can't have sleepovers. They don't want friends to come in their homes. They're embarrassed by it. The parents are embarrassed as well, right? They don't want, so no friends come over. So they go to their friends' house, and they've not only got beds, but they got throw pillows and, stuffed animals and all sorts of stuff, right? And then, what kind of message does that have on those children that don't have that? You got to worry about that. And then, in fact, I just did a post today on my social media about, I knew a friend of mine came up to me and he says, Luke, it's interesting you call it SHP because, sleep and Emily Peace. He says, because me and my sister grew up in a really rough home. And when it got bad, my little sister said, can we go to our secret hiding place, our SHP? And you know what? It was their bed. And doesn't that make sense? Miss Liz, don't you and I, when we have a bad day or get fired,
want to go to bed.
Yeah, especially when you're sick. I mean, unfortunately, my wife is under the weather right now. Where did she crawl into? The same place we all want to crawl into. It's our bed, and just totally shut out the world, right? And Unfortunately, these kids don't have that recharge. They don't have that sanctuary like you and I do.
Well, Luke, we have a question here about the chapters. Let me get it right here. How can someone start a chapter in their community?
Michael, thank you for your question. This is really where the rubber meets the road for me anyways, right? If you don't have a chapter in your area, and you don't have a way to volunteer, and this is something that really strikes a chord with you, you can go to our website, shpbeds.ca or shpbeds.org, and there's a tab there that says start a chapter. Now, the way we do it in Canada is a little bit different than the United States, but the outcome's the same. We're first initially want you to understand what does it take to be a chapter president, right? What goes into that? And I'll give you kind of the steps, right? So when you click on that button, it's going to ask you to fill out a little bit of information, right? Your name, number, email, basically, right? And then it's going to send you a webinar. It's a pre-recorded webinar. I think it's still me. I'm not sure, but it's someone talking about SHP and what it is. And thanks for doing all this. And we just want you to know kind of a 50,000 foot view of what you may be getting into. Then after that, if you're still gung-ho and want to do it, then we actually, you'll get a call from our training support lead and talk with them about, tell me a little bit about where you're at, what's your goals here, what's your thoughts. And if you still want to move forward after that phone call, then we invite you to what we call a chapter support lead meeting or webinar. A chapter support lead, we have the countries split up in different regions or different what we call regions rather. And these chapter support leads are over a certain region, and it's a call strictly for those that are interested in starting a chapter. So this is where you'll actually be able to talk face to face with maybe other people interested in starting a chapter. You'll obviously talk to, the chapter support lead there, your main contact, and ask any question you want. After that, then we have you fill out an application, and that application is really more just to get to know you. There's no right or wrong answers, right? It's just to get to know you and for you to get to know even a little bit more about what it takes to be a chapter president. And then after all of that, if you're still gung-ho, which I hope you are, then we schedule a time for you to fly to Salt Lake City. We do trainings once a quarter. And in those trainings, it's a weekend training where we not just talk about how you build beds and all that stuff. That's the easy part, So you out there that, I don't have any woodworking experience. Trust me, that's the easy part, right? The other part is just how do you run a chapter, right? We put on 4 trainings a year. We put on in fact, this coming training in April is the biggest training we've had in a long time. We're going to have almost 30 new chapters in one training. We haven't seen that for like 7-8 years. And so from that, we teach them all the ins and outs and all the things that they do, mostly a reporting issue because we have to report to our agencies. But after that, really chapter presidents just focus in on 3 things: raising money, building beds, and delivering beds. That's it. That's the easy part. All the other administration garbage that we have to go through in owning and running a nonprofit, the organization takes care of that for you.
I like that because you take all the stress away from everybody. You do all the stress stuff.
Right. Yeah. Well, the idea is we want the barrier to entry, right? There's a business term, to be as simple as possible, right? And because we know building beds, once you get it, it's a piece of cake, right? Yeah. The challenge, it does take a little time, a little organization, right? And it takes a community. And if we don't have it set up properly, which we do, but if we don't have it set up properly, then when the community shows up to help out, you don't get their buy-in because it's unorganized. It just doesn't seem like it's put together right. And the nonprofit, it's our responsibility to make sure we do things transparently. We're ethical and people can trust us, because when we get $1, we value that $1 very greatly. When we have a volunteer show up to volunteer, we want them to have a great experience, because that is where real change happens, is when the community jumps in and decides, you know what, like I did 14 years ago, no kid is going to sleep on the floor in my town, right? That's the kind of spirit and passion that we hope to find in volunteers in chapter presidents.
Well, and it kind of goes to this question that just came in. This viewer just tuned in. So what inspired the very first bed built back in 2012? We shared a little bit on the first Teatime, and you just shared a little bit, but share again for people that are just tuning in now, Luke.
It's a great question. When and I'll put it simply, when I heard about a child sleeping on the floor, right? I know internally I was going through some introspection. I can't remember the word, but so just thinking about internally who I was, right? Introspection, right? Is that the word? Anyways, it escapes me right now. But besides all that, when I heard about children sleeping on the floor, it just hit me really strongly, because I thought about my own kids, right? And I had 3 kids on my own, And what would it be like as a dad with kids sleeping on the floor, or mom, but certainly for them, what is it like to sleep on the floor day in and day out, right? And then the second thing that came in is how easy it would be to solve that problem, right? I can do that. I know how to work wood and use a saw and a drill. So I have no excuse not to help out. I guess that's just my thought process, right? And when I finally dove in to do it with the Boy Scouts, at first we built that first bed, and then they delivered it. They told me how amazing it was, and I didn't get to go on the delivery, so I didn't really get to see the fruits of the spoils, right? But what I did see was the Boy Scouts having a fulfilling feeling, like, being understanding and seeing and feeling the joy of serving other people, as well as appreciating the thing that they had, like a bed. So I wanted that for my own kids. And that's really the kickoff of Sleep in Heavenly Peace. Was it really didn't have much to do, the second bed anyways, didn't have anything to do with, hey, I know of a kid I'm going to get a bed for, because I didn't. I had solved the problem, right? This was more about providing something, a dad moment, to teach my kids something, and which then, of course, turned into, oh my gosh, child bedlessness is a real thing, and it is everywhere, and no one's doing anything about it. Well, that's got to change,
Absolutely. It has to change. And that's why you're here again for the second time. So, Luke, what kind of beds are you building? Are they all bunk beds? Or are they single beds? What type of beds are you building?
When I first started this, I didn't even know what I was necessarily doing. I mean, I had a plan, right? I knew the first family that we were delivered to had, I believe it was 3 kids. I know at least 2. Man, it's been almost 20 years ago, so I'm trying to remember. But I know that we built a bunk bed because it was at least 2 kids. And most of the time, Miss Liz, most of these situations that we go into, they're simple. Simple means small rooms, not a lot of space to work with, right? And so we started out doing bunk beds. Luckily enough, the only bunk bed that I knew was my daughter's bunk bed, and it of course could be split up into, used to be a full bed and then a twin bed is what her bunk bed was. I didn't want to do that. I knew I had to make the process of building it simple. Because I'm a simple guy, and I didn't want to make it complicated, mostly because I had 12-year-old Boy Scouts coming over helping me build it. They got to make it pretty easy, right? And so we built bunk beds, but I basically, all I did, and you can see a headboard behind me. That's what a headboard looks like right there.
Well, that's nice. It's simple.
It's simple, yeah. That is a top headboard, because you can kind of see. Let's see if I can get my finger right there. That little screw right there is for the safety rail. Well, if you take this same headboard and just turn it upside down, that's the bottom bed. So all I did was build the same headboard and then flip it upside down and add one more screw hole. So the process of building it is super simple. That's why in some of these big builds that we do, Miss Liz, we can build a single bed in 12 and a half seconds.
Wow. Look at that, guys. 12 and a half seconds.
Isn't that crazy?
I went on your website and I found out some of the numbers, and some of the numbers are really scary. Beds needed now, 140,118 beds needed now.
Yeah.
So how can we get these beds made? How can people support?
Yeah, and that's and that number fluctuates almost on a daily basis, right? We have 400 chapters, about 388 or so that are active, but these chapters, they accept applications coming into them through whatever zip code is entered in for the application. There's a lot of applications we get that aren't part of that 140,000. That's 140,000 that we can get to. That doesn't include the other however many thousands
that we don't even know about.
Well, not only that we can't get to. We don't have a zip code of a chapter for that yet, right? So, and yes, let alone, you're right, 140 plus thousand right now as you and I are talking, right?
Yep.
But we still only cover 28%. So there's still 70% of the country in the United States, they don't even know about us. And it's even worse in Canada, right? And so they don't even know about us. So if 140,000, then that's only 28%. You can imagine what that number looks like, right? And the only way, I knew, Liz, a long time ago, the only way we're going to reach that 140,000 is not going to be from one single kid farm kid from Idaho, right? This has to be solved by the people in the communities, right? That's how they're going to find us. That's how we're going to find them. And that's how we're going to solve this problem. And so we just built an easy platform, franchise, quote, if you will, but a platform where another farm kid from some country or whatever, some county, can jump in and actually solve the problem for the kids locally.
Well, we have some more questions here about volunteer. What skills are needed to be a volunteer?
Oh, great question. Absolutely nothing.
Oh, the drill.
Yeah, the only thing we need is your heart, honestly. Hey, if a 12-year-old scout can do it, holy crap, anybody can. One of my favorite pictures is a build actually is a 4-year-old kid sanding a board, right next to a 104-year-old man, right? It was kind of cool, a whole century difference. And we like that. I like that picture because it shows you it's not rocket science. You don't need some big Harvard degree or be what people call a successful businessman. No, you just need a heart and you just need to have passion and want to help. Because here's the thing. That's why I tell Liz, everybody, I'm just a farm kid from Idaho, because really that's all I am, right? And when people see people on podcasts or TV or whatnot, they put them on this pedestal and they think, especially if they're successful in business, right? Good job. You're great at what you did. That's awesome, right? But you're no different than the next guy, right?
We all bleed red.
We all bleed red, right? We're all humans helping humans, right?
Yeah.
And so if I can help people understand that, listen, if a farm kid from Idaho can do it, anybody can do it. You really can, right? You have to take action, right? Everybody wants to change. Everybody wants to be better. Everybody wants to do good. Even if it's internally deep down in there, that's what we all want. So why don't we, right? And I actually do a lot of keynote speaking on this about following your tiny moments and things of that nature, because we spend a lot of time, too much time, wanting to change, right? And that's good. You need to have that. Don't get me wrong. But how much time are you spending on the next step, which is the desire to act, right? We don't think about spending time on that, right? And really, that's the most important part, because if you don't act on it, and if you don't practice or try and work on that desire to act, and you're just sitting here in this, man, I want to change. I wish I did that. I've been in that stage. I've been in that loop, right? Nothing happens from it. It just loops and loops and loops, and you get more
it's just talk, right? Everyone's just talking. Talk. I want to change, but you're not moving. Like walk. Correct. Walk the talk.
And here's the thing, they literally do, right? And it's probably easy for us to say, gosh, buck up, just get it done, right? Go get this done. That's what we want to say. That's what we tell ourselves, right? But the problem is why don't we? It's because we all can do it. We all can. The problem is, and here's the answer, stop working on your desire to change. You already know that base is covered, right? Now work on your desire to act, right? Whatever that is, right? For me, sitting on the couch, doom and gloom, in the loop, trying to pep talk myself out, blah, blah, blah. It took my kids to wake me up and see this. You know what? My kids are not going to appreciate the things they have. They're not going to feel the joy of service if I don't get my bleepity bleep off this couch right now. So my desire to act instantly skyrocketed, right? And that's when it dawns on me. I spent no time working on that desire. I worked on wanting to change all day long, right? But I needed to work on my desire to act.
We talked about this with volunteers. You said the dirtiest ones and the
sweatiest.
Sweatiest are the best volunteers. But we have a question here for what advice would you give to a new volunteer, Luke?
Well, first of all, thanks for showing up, right? And the best advice, and all you nonprofits out there, listen, this is gold nuggets right here. Volunteers want an experience, right? And you as the leader or whatnot of the organization or the founder or whatever, it doesn't matter. When you're working with volunteers, you need to make the volunteer experience just as important as your actual mission. We provide beds for kids. Obviously, that's important. That's our mission. But we also provide a volunteer experience for the volunteer, because why that's important? If your volunteer has a great experience, and I'll talk about what that means, But if they have a great experience, guess what they're going to do? They're going to show up again. They're going to tell their friends and bring their friends. They're going to talk about you to people that are potential donors. They're going to expand your mission. They're your sales. I mean, all of these things are going to come because they had a great experience. Okay, so what is a great experience for a volunteer, right? And I don't know if I shared my Hank story with you the first time.
Yeah, you did. The old guy.
The old guy, that's right. It's a great example of Hank taught me the lesson that, listen, and when you stop and think about it, it's so true. When we work hard at something, right, that's when you get the most out of it. So why is as nonprofits, we try to make the process easier for these volunteers. All we're doing is robbing them from the experience and the fulfilling feelings that come from hard work. So you volunteers out there, the advice I give you is dive in, work hard. That's where real fulfillment starts to come in, because guess what? Then you realize you are actually making a huge difference. You are changing not just someone's world, you're changing your world too, right? And that's important. Yeah.
So Luke, question here. Are there any upcoming global expansion plans?
Boy, we're trying, right? We still only covering 28% of the United States, and our AOP goals this year are to reach 38 or 40, whatever it was. That's a hefty goal, right? So we have a lot of work still to do here, and some of that reason why is because we in the United States, we can stretch people's dollars a lot farther, right? We actually, when you donate $1 to SHP, we actually convert that to about $1.30, right? Because of our buying power and deals and discounts and donations that we get, right? So we can expand that dollar. We don't have that same luxury in other countries, right? We don't have, and we don't really have the same time. I mean, I get called almost daily about Africa and some of those other, third world countries that need a lot of help, but it has to take someone in that country that's willing to push and go hard. I go to Costa Rica now quite a bit, and I'm looking into right now, what does it take to start something in Costa Rica, right? There's legal issues, there's residents, people there that need to be involved, and that's great. We know how to do it. We just need to have someone to get kick the car into gear and start rolling with it, and then we can help guide it. So
we just need community leaders to step up, right? They want to try something different. They want to work with the community. This is a good way to get involved in the community.
And Liz, listen, let me clarify, and I know what you mean, but I want to make sure I clarify. We don't need community leaders. We just need someone. You know what I'm saying? Be a leader, turn into a leader. Well,
that's what I meant. Like, be a leader in your community, right?
Yeah,
like, it doesn't have to be like the mayor of the town or the city council, or nonprofits in the community. But just be that leader. Be that person that steps up and says, you know what, I want to be the change in my community.
What's funny is, sorry to cut you off. I was going to say and this is just one example of many of our chapter presidents. He's a pretty big introvert. And you don't think of an introvert as a leader. Typically not, right? He's one of the better chapter presidents we have, because usually introverts are pretty humble. They're pretty, to themselves. But when he finds passion, right, he takes off with it. He leads differently, but he has a strong chapter, because it's not necessarily the leader that they're following, right? They're following the mission, and he puts the mission before anything, which is what people want, what people follow, right? That's why anybody can do this. We really, Sleep in Heavenly Peace doesn't build any beds. We don't build beds. We teach the community and have them build the beds, right? And that's why no experience is necessary. A lot of times we have people that have never touched a drill before in their lives. I think that's why they like it, right? Because they come in and they're like, I don't know how to use a saw or a sander or a drill. And by the end of it, 4 hours later, they're skilled professionals, right? At least on how to build a bed. And so it's a combination of what it's going to, what causes and impacts it's going to have. And then the process, right? You get to learn something. You get to physically put your hands on every piece of wood. Your fingerprints are on every single bed that goes through that line and eventually into a home for a child. And that's a neat thing to have, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And how much does it cost to make a bed again?
So in the United States, on average, right, wood and mattresses are obviously the biggest expense of the bed. But on average, it's $300 for a single bed for the whole thing. In Canada, I think it's $450, if I'm recalling, but it's right around there. And then that's everything. Delivery, that helps run the organization. That's the whole 9 yards, right? And about 70% or close to that, I don't have the exact numbers with me, but it's around there. 70% of our income, our donations, come from corporations that want to do team building exercises. So they pay the $300 for however many beds they want to build. If they donate $6,000, we build 20 beds and off we go, So it's just, and it's a round number not a round number, but it's a number of people can get their mind behind and wrap their mind around. You got to have a budget somewhere, right? And all you nonprofits, listen, that's another key gold nugget is make your program your fundraiser. So no one wants to, I build beds for kids. That's my passion. I don't have a passion for putting on galas or spaghetti feeds or anything, right? I'd rather.
I'll
terrible.
eat it, but I'm not putting it on.
This is a funny story. The very first fundraiser we ever did, right? I mean, this is like 4 years into this. So it's 2015, 16, something like that. It was a spaghetti feed. And I worked on that darn thing for a month and a half, planning this, getting this, blah, 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 getting the plate. I mean, anybody that's done that knows what I'm talking about. Well, at the end of the day, I made $3,500, which was, cool. Don't get me wrong. I kid you not. The same week, I walked into a company's and I said, hey, this is what we do. And so if you have an activity coming up, he's like, sure enough, we got like the company summer picnic party and we need an activity. How's 10 grand? And I remember going, I've been here for an hour or less and I just made 10 grand. I mean, but this is it. People don't, I get it, fundraising, and that's okay, right? That's part of it. But and I know I'm telling a fisherman to go fishing without a fishing pole. I get that. But listen, when the fish are ready to jump in your boat, don't cover your boat up, right? Open it up, right? Expand. And that's where if you're a nonprofit that can make your mission your fundraiser, then that's what you want to do anyways. And your expenses are tied to your fundraiser, which is your mission, and vice versa. So if you don't build beds, you don't expand. You don't have expenses, right? If you have expenses, it's because you're building beds and you got the dollars and budgets for it. It's not rocket science, other than it is kind of hard for some nonprofits to try to find using their mission and their program as the fundraiser. I get it. But whatever percentage you can do, whether it's 100% or 2%, whatever percentage you can do to have that come from your program, it's just a much better way to raise funds.
Well, Luke, let's get into national partners because you have Lowe's, DeVault, Flex, Power Tools, Jockey, Foundation Support Workers, Ashley, Sertel, Simpson's Bedding. Talk about how you got all of those involved in.
Great question. In fact, I just got off the meeting, and I'm okay to say this. I just got the meeting with Ford Motor Company yesterday, and they're going to be a big sponsor. They've already given us quite a bit of money and done some builds. So it's been an interesting learning experience. I was in outside sales for 20 years, and every business and every different type of business has its own sales cycle, right? Of how the sales goes and what key things do you key on, and the people you talk to, and anyways. So I didn't know how to do that in the nonprofit space, which is obviously a different business from other nonprofits. And so that sales cycle can be a little bit different. So for a while, especially when I came out of the executive director role and went in just a founder and head of development there for a while, this is what I was tasked with. Well, I found out something very interesting. And this is another gold nugget, right? Corporations, they want to give back. They really do. But they also obviously want something in return. And that's not always recognition, right? They want an experience for their volunteers. So what I found and what I stumble on and use, we have a program called the Partnership Funding Program. And what it is an organization that's nationwide like we are. They want their organization, their employees especially, and especially the community, they want them to know that they give back, right? They have a corporate social responsibility. Every organization does. And it's becoming more and more required, which I think is great for our world today. And so they have to go find this. Well, too often do these national organizations, they don't have time and energy to try to find something that covers the whole country. So what do? They just tell their individual offices, go do whatever just make sure you have a project, right? Well, now you've got 200 or whatever, there's 50 different locations all working on a different project, right? So what message does that send to the employees and to the overall country, right? Yeah, we work on stuff, or we give back, which is great. Don't get me wrong. That's right. But can you imagine if you could send the message to the country that, hey, XYZ company and their 30 or 40 affiliates, they all built, 10,000 beds last year, right? Instead of one location, I don't know, providing books for the homeless or food kitchens or whatever it is, right? No, they have one initiative, right? And they love that because everybody loves big numbers. Everybody loves big impact reporting, especially on a national level, right? It's hard to get excited living in, Missouri and hear about the affiliate in San Diego, California, did this. Okay, that's great. Good job, right? And it's kind of unfair too, because maybe the San Diego office is 3 times bigger than the Missouri office, right? So their impact looks way bigger. Why not pool that all together? And now collectively, the whole organization has one initiative. It can report, which I think is another huge mistake on nonprofits who don't provide impact reporting, clean and meaningful impact reporting. These are the things that nonprofits miss out on. So to sum up, if you can provide, and I would recommend providing an opportunity in whatever way that you can to organizations on a regional or a national level, that you can pool your initiative together into one and then provide impact reporting to them. In our case, let's say Ford Motor Company donates, $150,000 or $500,000 to us. We put that in a little fund and it sits there until any one of their organizations or affiliates across the country want to build beds. Then we just pull money from that, right? So that money gets used for exactly what its purposes are, to build beds, but the organization gets to use that to help their own employees be a part of it, to share the initiative in not just the town we just built in, but everywhere. And, at the end of the day, they get to say, hey, we just built 10,000 beds with all of our affiliates all over the country. Our initiative is we're making sure no kid sleeps on the floor in our town. It's just a bigger thing to get behind. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And it's always nice to bring in the acknowledgement of all these businesses that are helping as well. Word of mouth goes a long way. You go to Lowe's and you buy some wood and you're like, oh, well, did you hear about, Sleep in Heavenly Peace? They're making beds. Would you like to donate some wood? Extra wood that's left over on projects and that, if they'd like to donate that wood in that as well. I'm going to bring up your logo so that we can show people what, awesome. If they see it on platforms and that, they can reach out to those community as well, because you have many on Instagram that I tried to tag as many as I could. So
awesome.
Let's get that out there for people to see it. I'm just going to take this comment off so people.
And I think it's important too to realize, listen, do corporations, national corporations, care about their brand or at least the acknowledgement, nationwide of this initiative? Of course they do. Of course they do. But I learned, again, another little gold nugget here. They don't care near as much about that, about being recognized nationwide because they're helping save the ocean or whatever it is, right? They care more about what their employees think and how their employees can get involved. Because that's really the most important part to them, is making sure that their employees know this is a good company, that they care about the community. They want you to care about it and be involved, right? That's what they can at least control, right? Is how they hear about it. I look at Lowe's. Lowe's is our biggest sponsor. And what's funny right now, when you go to Lowe's, any Lowe's store in the country, and you purchase something, when you round up, it goes, parts of that roundup goes to SHP, which is pretty cool. But what people don't understand, that the money for that and their main initiative is to provide service for their employees, probably first. I don't want to speak for them, but first, and secondly, obviously, is to let everybody know they're behind this initiative, right? And so don't think that if you come in and you're gonna share, their logo on your website and that's going to make all the difference. Trust me, I went down that road and it's not near as attractive to them as what you think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Luke, let's talk about this logo here. So if people see this logo, they know there's a chapter in that area and they can check on different platforms. I know Instagram has many of these logos because there are many chapters that are in the United States. But if anybody would like to know more about the logo and how you came about the logo and when they see it, what could they do? Like, can they run to that chapter? Can they
It's a great story. The logo is kind of funny. When I first built my first beds, I think if I recall, it was my little sister said, well, we got to put something on the bed or with the bed so people know it came from SHP, and at first I didn't care, right? Okay, whatever, but it is nice to know. What I wanted them to know was if someone walked in and saw little Johnny's bed here, they knew it came from our organization. So they knew there was an organization out there that provided it, right? That was the main goal. And so I said, sure, why not? So my sister, who's kind of artsy fartsy type gal, she made these cards that we wrapped around like one of the posts of the bed. And we knew they were going to last about 2 days before they got ripped off, but at least they got something, right? Well, the next year we scheduled our second build. And of course, at that time, all my friends knew what I was doing and we were doing it again. Well, all of a sudden, one of my old high school buddies walks in. He's a farmer and kind of a welder type guy. Well, he walks in and he had this branding iron. And on the branding iron had a big S, a little s, a big H, and a small P. And he's like, hey, instead of these stupid, things that get ripped off, why don't we just brand the beds? And I'm like, that's brilliant, right? So we started, in fact, I've got that brander here somewhere in my office. So we started branding the beds. Well, and it was just the letters. Well, later on, when we got a little bit more organized and a little bit more marketing savvy, we actually created this logo. And the funny thing is I wanted the logo, the H, to be a bunk bed. I mean, you got an H, you're missing a great opportunity to make that a bunk bed. No one wanted that, which I thought was really weird. I'm like, why wouldn't she want that? It's perfect, right? Well, they're not going to get it. It doesn't look like an H. And I'm like, trust me, it looks like an H. So that's the only thing I had to fight for was the H had to be a freaking bunk bed because it made sense,
You had to fight for it.
Yeah, I had to fight for it. And it turned out really great, and it started out with the brainstorm of me and another buddy of mine, his wife, who was creative, and we created this logo. And it's gone through some moderate changes here and there. But when the point is branding is obviously very important. And we want people, when they look at that logo, and this is important too when it comes to mission creep and understanding what the organization does. You want people to look at that brand and have it tell a story, right? And that story needs to be clear. When you look at Sleep in Heavenly Peace, it's very clear that we provide some sort of bedding, something like that, right? And so it tells a little bit of the story. But ultimately, we want people to look at that and instantly know exactly what that brand means. When you look at the Nike logo, you know what you're getting, right? You just know, right? And we want that for Sleep in Heavenly Peace. So it's a simple brand. It's a little bit childish, but a little bit professional. It's got a little bit of Christmas hint to it, but it doesn't. I mean, we're trying to cover all the bases the best we could.
Well, the red bedspread and the polka dots, is that the bedding that goes onto the bed, or is that just a design? Just
a design that came through. And what's funny about that, we had actually a chapter in Wisconsin. A little old lady just loved it so much she quilted a polka dot. I mean, it's picture perfect to our logo. It's the only one I know of that's ever been done. And they wear that thing and they display that thing with pride because it is pretty cool. It looks just like our polka dotted logo, and they run it through parades and all sorts of stuff. So it's kind of fun.
Wow, cool. So, Luke, how can everyone get involved and where can they check out, read out the website and all that good stuff,
You
and
bet.
any final messages that you have, and then we're going to wrap it up.
Absolutely. Yeah, shpbeds.org or shpbeds.ca, depending on what country you're in. When you bring that website up, right, what's going to happen is you're not going to see some big national organization. You will in Canada. We haven't made that switch just yet. But in the United States, it's not going to bring up some big national organization. It's going to bring up what's going on in your local community, because that's how this gets solved. We want you to know how many kids are hurting in your own community, right? You're going to see how many beds that chapter's built. You can see how active they are and whatnot. You're going to see how you can donate, and that donation goes to that chapter. You can specify whatever chapter you want, right? So that's cool. If there's not a chapter, you can start one, like I said. And one of the most important things is if you know of a child, maybe your own or someone, 5 states over or 5 provinces over, you can actually apply for a bed for that child in from that website, right?
Oh.
But the biggest ask, oh yeah, absolutely, it's a reference program where you can put the information down that you know of. We'll contact the referral just to make sure everything's fine and kind of give a little bit of the story, and then we can schedule delivery with the family after we contact them. But the biggest ask, honestly, Liz, is look, we can't solve problems if we don't know about them. Right. And this is a problem, trust me, no one knows about. Right. Yeah. There's probably most of your audience right now had no idea that child bedlessness was as big, bad, and ugly as it is. Right. The only way we're going to solve that is if we get people to open their mouth, share this podcast, share what you heard today, find out for yourself, go to the local school, ask a school counselor or a first responder. Hey, have you ever seen kids sleeping on the floor? You'll be blown away how many people there are. It's 3% or not, or greater. No question. It's greater than 3%. So if you live in a town, 100,000 people, how many kids are sleeping on the floor, and you'll be surprised. Child bedlessness doesn't know economics necessarily. It doesn't know race or religion or culture or geographic. It doesn't know any of that stuff. It just knows hardship, heartache, troubled times. That's all it knows, right? And so it can happen anywhere. There's a county in the United States called Pinehurst, South Carolina. It's actually a town, but Pinehurst, South Carolina. It's one of the richest counties in the country. It's where all the PGA golf courses are at. All this, we got a chapter there. So that doesn't tell you this happens anywhere. I don't know what does. So yeah, that's the biggest ask, is just if you can donate, if you can be involved. Great. You're going to do that for yourself. I hope you need to get the feeling from that, see what's going on, help out. But if you can't do any of that, you can do this. We all can open our mouths and share the story,
Absolutely. And that's why we do these podcasts, right? And this is why I bring incredible guests like you, Luke, on my platform, because I want to bring awareness to things that we do not know about. That if you check out Miss Liz's Teatimes in the last 7 years, you're going to see a lot of guests that have been on Teatime that nobody knew about, their stories, and amazing people. And that's what we do on Teatime, is we have a lot of incredible change makers like you, Luke. So I just really want to thank you for joining me again for the second time. And for all the listeners out there, I'm just going to do a quick wrap up and give you a little bit of food for thought for all of you listeners out there. What a powerful and meaningful conversation. Luke, thank you for returning to this table and continuing to share your mission and your heart. You remind us that impact is not one-time effort. It is something we choose again and again. This afternoon, we were reminded that something as simple as a bed can represent safety, comfort, dignity, and the ability for a child to rest and dream. Here is something to carry when you leave after this tea time. If a child in your community is sleeping on the floor, then there is something we can all do to change that. You can share this message and raise awareness. You can donate to help build and deliver a bed. You can volunteer your time and be part of the hands that make a difference, or even consider starting a chapter in your community, becoming the change for children who need it most. Small actions create real impact. Until our next cup, share, keep choosing kindness, keep choosing awareness, and keep showing up where it matters most. And thank you all for joining me on Teatime. I could not do this without all of you guys, so thank you. And again, thank you, Luke, for joining me on Teatime and being a guest and being a change maker that we need in today's world today.
Thanks for having me.